I was driving toward my childhood home on Thanksgiving morning, watching the familiar streets pass by through my windshield. The November air was crisp, and fallen leaves scattered across the sidewalks in shades of burnt orange and deep red. In the passenger seat sat my homemade pumpkin pie, the one thing I had always been good at making, the one thing that used to make my grandmother smile. I felt that familiar weight pressing against my chest, that mix of hope and dread I always carried when heading back to that house. I knew things had been rough between us, but it was Thanksgiving. Family was supposed to matter, right? I pulled into the driveway and saw my brother's car already parked there. I took a deep breath, grabbed the pie, and walked toward the front door with a smile I had rehearsed the entire drive over. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you appreciate honest family stories like this one, please hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to hear how this Thanksgiving turned into the moment that changed everything. My father opened the door before I could knock. His expression was cold hard, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. The words came out flat and final. "We do not want to see your face here." I stood there frozen, the pie still balanced in my hands. Behind him, I could see my brother Tyler standing in the hallway, arms crossed over his chest, that familiar smirk spreading across his face like he had just won something. I tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but my throat had closed up. Past them both, I could see into the dining room. The table was already set with our grandmother's good china. The smell of roasting turkey and stuffing drifted out through the open door, mixing with the cold autumn air at my back. They had planned this whole Thanksgiving dinner. They had cooked and prepared and set the table. They just had not planned on including me. I stood there on that porch looking at my father's face, at my brother's satisfied grin, and something inside me went very quiet and very calm. Tyler's voice carried from inside. "Told you he would show up anyway." My mother was visible now, sitting at the dining table, but when our eyes met, she looked away quickly, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. The silence stretched out between us, broken only by the wind rustling through the bare tree branches overhead. I felt the humiliation burning in my chest, the sting of rejection sharp and immediate. But I also felt something else rising up beneath it: dignity, self-respect, the understanding that I did not need to beg for a place at a table where I was not wanted. I smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was genuine. "Understood," I said quietly. "Enjoy your dinner." I bent down and placed the pumpkin pie carefully on the porch step, then turned and walked back to my car. I did not run. I did not look back. I just walked, got in my car, and drove away. As I drove, my mind went back over the years, trying to understand how we had gotten here. Growing up, Tyler had been the golden child. He was the star athlete in high school, the business major in college, the one who married young, to a woman named Diane, that our parents absolutely adored. I was different. I was sensitive, artistic, the kid who spent more time in the kitchen helping our grandmother bake than I did playing sports. When I told my family I wanted to become a pastry chef, my father had laughed. Not a good-natured laugh, a dismissive one. "Real men do not bake cookies for a living," he had said. I heard variations of that phrase for years. My father, Robert, was a retired construction foreman. He valued physical strength, traditional masculinity, practical work you could see and touch. My career baffling him. My mother, Patricia, was passive, the kind of woman who kept peace at any cost, which usually meant siding with my father and pretending everything was fine. Over the years, Tyler got everything: financial help for his house down payment, startup funds for his various business ventures, constant praise and attention at every family gathering. I got criticism, dismissive comments about my job, fewer invitations to family events. It was like I was slowly being erased from the family portrait. The breaking point had come 6 months ago. Tyler had called me asking to borrow $5,000 for what he called a sure-thing investment opportunity. I had worked hard to build my savings, and something about the desperation in his voice made me uneasy. I said no. I tried to be kind about it, but I said no. Tyler had been furious. He told me I thought I was better than everyone, that I had always looked down on the family. None of it was true, but he said it anyway. And he said it to our parents, too. Since then, I had been increasingly excluded. Calls went unreturned. Text messages got one-word responses. Invitations stopped coming. But I had still hoped, stupidly perhaps, that Thanksgiving would be different, that the holiday would remind them that family was supposed to mean something. I arrived back at my small apartment and put the pie in the refrigerator. I stood there in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by the tools of my trade, the mixers and measuring cups and recipe books I had collected over the years. I ran a successful bakery called Jefferson's Sweet Corner. It was small but thriving, with loyal customers and a reputation for quality. I had built this life on my own, without their help, without their approval. I should have felt proud. Instead, I just felt lonely. Around 7 o'clock that evening, my phone rang. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. 3 more calls from Tyler, then 1 from my mother, then my father. My suspicion grew with each call. This was not normal. Something had happened. By the time my father called for the 5th time, my curiosity won over my hurt. I answered, "Jefferson." My father's voice was different, urgent, almost panicked. "We need you to come back, right now." The calm I had felt earlier returned. "I thought you did not want to see my face," I said evenly. He stumbled over his words, something about an emergency, about needing me there immediately. "What kind of emergency?" I asked. He would not explain clearly, just kept repeating that it was a family emergency and I needed to be there. Then Tyler grabbed the phone from him. "Jeff, please," Tyler said, and his voice was desperate in a way I had never heard before. "This is serious. We messed up." The shift in his tone was startling. Hours ago he had been smirking at my humiliation. Now he sounded genuinely scared. "What happened?" I asked. There was a pause, then Tyler's voice came back quieter. "It is about Grandma Helen's will. The lawyer is here." My whole body went cold. Grandma Helen had passed away 3 months ago. I had been extremely close to her. She was the only one in the family who had supported my dream of becoming a pastry chef. She used to tell me that creating something beautiful and delicious was just as important as building houses or closing business deals. She understood me in a way no one else in the family ever had. I had attended her funeral, of course. But when it came time for the will reading, I was told it was just a formality, that there was nothing I needed to be there for. I had accepted that explanation, grieving in my own way. Now apparently something about that will required my presence. Tyler was still talking, the words tumbling out fast. "The lawyer showed up tonight, out of nowhere. She had documents. Grandma's will has this clause we did not know about." "What clause?" I asked, though part of me already knew this was going to be absurd. Tyler took a breath. "Her entire estate goes to the family, the house, the savings, everything. But there is a condition. All 4 of us have to be present together to receive the inheritance. Mom, Dad, you and me. If even one person is absent or refuses to participate, the whole thing goes to charity." I sat down slowly on my couch, processing this information. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "The house is worth about $300,000, Tyler said. Plus she had savings of around $150,000. The lawyer gave us a 2-hour window to get everyone together. We have 45 minutes left." The irony was so thick, I almost laughed. Hours ago they had slammed a door in my face. Now they needed me desperately to secure nearly $500,000. "Please, Jeff," Tyler continued, "I know we treated you badly today, I know that. But this is Grandma's money. She would want us to have it, would not she?" There was logic in what he said, but it was drowned out by the memory of my father's cold voice, my brother's satisfied smirk, my mother's averted eyes. "Where was this family unity at 3 o'clock this afternoon when Dad blocked the doorway?" I asked quietly. Tyler put my mother on the phone. I could hear her crying before she even spoke. "Jefferson, honey, I am so sorry. I should have stood up for you today. I was wrong, so wrong. Please come back." Hearing my mother cry had always been hard for me, even knowing she had chosen comfort over defending me countless times. Then my father's voice came through the speaker. His pride was clearly shattered, his voice stiff with the effort of what he was about to say. "Son, I made a mistake today. We need you here." It was not quite an apology. It was an admission of need, which was not the same thing at all. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Tyler while I still had my father on the line. "Dude, this is life-changing money. Do not be stubborn. 30 minutes left." I looked around my apartment. On the walls were my culinary school diplomas, the awards my bakery had won, photographs of me, with the friends who had actually shown up for me over the years. I had built this life without them. I had succeeded without their approval or their help, and now they wanted me to rush back and save them from the consequences of their own cruelty. The phone kept ringing. Text messages poured in, each one more desperate than the last. Tyler again. "We will split it evenly, I swear." My mother. "Please, baby, Grandma loved you so much." My father. "Time is running out." I sat there in the silence of my apartment, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to let them lose everything. Part of me thought about Grandma Helen, about what she would want. She had loved all of us even when we did not deserve it. If I did not go, the money would go to charity, which she probably would have been fine with. But if I did go, I would hold all the power for the first time in my entire life. That realization changed everything. I finally called back. There were 15 minutes left on their deadline. My voice was calm and measured when my father answered. "I will come back," I said. I heard Tyler whoop in the background, heard my mother's sob of relief. "But," I continued, "we are doing this my way." The celebration sounds stopped. "Anything," Tyler said quickly. "Just hurry." I took my time. "Here are my conditions. First, Dad will apologize to me in front of the lawyer and acknowledge his disrespect. Second, Tyler will admit he lied about me 6 months ago. Third, going forward, I get equal treatment and respect in this family, or I walk away permanently. Fourth, my share of the inheritance goes into a trust that I control. Tyler does not manage anything for me." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could picture them looking at each other, weighing their options, calculating how much pride they were willing to swallow for $100,000 each. Finally, my father's voice came back tight with suppressed anger, but controlled. "Fine, just get here." I smiled to myself. "I am not finished," I said. "One more thing." I paused, letting the tension build. "The pumpkin pie I left on your porch. When I arrive, I want to see all 3 of you eating it and admitting it is the best pie you have ever had." Tyler's voice exploded through the speaker. "Are you serious?" I had never been more serious about anything in my life. "Dead serious," I said. "That is the price. Take it or leave it." More silence, longer this time. Then my mother's voice, small and defeated. "We will do it, honey. Please come." I checked the time. "I will be there in 12 minutes. Tell the lawyer to wait." I hung up before they could respond. I sat there for a moment, taking a deep breath, feeling a sense of power and clarity I had never experienced with my family before. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their respect through accomplishment, through being good, through proving my worth. Now I understood. Sometimes respect only comes when you are willing to walk away. I drove back to the house with 8 minutes to spare. I parked in the driveway behind Tyler's car and walked to the front door. It was open this time, waiting for me. Inside, I could see a middle-aged woman in a business suit sitting at the dining table with a briefcase and several folders spread out in front of her. The Thanksgiving dinner they had prepared was still there, but cold now, untouched. My father, mother, and brother were standing in an awkward cluster near the table. I stepped inside and nodded professionally to the lawyer. "You must be Jefferson," she said. "I am Miss Carter. We have been waiting." I met her eyes and smiled. "I understand. But before we proceed with any legal matters, my family has something they need to do." I pointed to my pumpkin pie, which had been brought inside and placed on the kitchen counter. Tyler looked at me with an expression that mixed humiliation with desperate hope. He walked to the counter, cut 4 slices, and brought 3 of them to the table. My father, mother, and brother sat down, and each took a bite. I stood there with my arms crossed, watching. My mother spoke first, and to her credit, she sounded genuine. "This is delicious, Jefferson, truly the best pie I have ever tasted." Tyler swallowed and nodded. "Yeah, it is incredible." My father chewed slowly, his jaw working. Then he looked up at me. "You have always been talented," he said quietly. "I was too blind to see it." I nodded. "Thank you." Then my father stood up. He walked over to face me directly, something he had not done with real honesty in years. "I was wrong today," he said. Each word seemed to cost him something. "I disrespected you. You are my son, and I failed you. I am sorry." I looked at this man who had dismissed me my entire life, who had valued my brother's conventional success over my unconventional passion, and I felt no satisfaction in his apology, just sadness for all the years we had wasted. "I appreciate that," I said. Tyler stepped forward next. He could not quite meet my eyes, but he spoke clearly enough. "I lied to them about you 6 months ago, after you would not loan me the money. I was jealous and angry that you were doing well when my business was failing. I told them you said you were better than us, that you looked down on the family. None of it was true. You never said those things. I made it up because I was bitter. I am sorry." I studied my brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the golden child, just a man who had been given everything and still felt he did not have enough. "Apology accepted," I said, "from both of you." I turned to my mother. She was crying again, but quietly now. "And you?" I asked. She wiped her eyes. "I should have defended you every single time," she said. "Every time your father dismissed your career, every time Tyler made a snide comment, every time you were excluded. I chose my own comfort over protecting my son. I am deeply sorry, Jefferson." I felt tears threatening behind my own eyes, but kept my composure. This was not the time to break down. This was the time to see it through. Ms. Carter cleared her throat gently. "We have 4 minutes until the deadline," she said. "Shall we proceed?" Everyone moved to sit at the table. Ms. Carter opened one of the folders and began explaining the will in more detail. Grandma Helen had indeed left her estate to be divided equally among the 4 of us. The house in the suburbs, her savings account, her car, everything. But the clause was ironclad. All 4 of us had to be present and sign the documents together, and it had to happen within the specified time window, or the entire estate would be donated to the local children's hospital. It was very important to Mrs. Helen that her family remain united, Ms. Carter explained. She hoped this condition would ensure you all stayed together. We all signed where Ms. Carter indicated. I watched the pen move across the paper, making it official. Each of us would receive roughly $112,000 once everything was liquidated and distributed. Ms. Carter gathered the documents, placed them back in her briefcase, and stood. "Congratulations," she said. "I will file these first thing Monday morning. You should expect to hear from the estate attorney within 2 weeks." She shook hands with each of us and left the front door, closing softly behind her. The silence in the room was heavy. The cold Thanksgiving dinner sat on the table between us, a monument to the disaster this day had been. I stood up. "I am leaving now," I said. "We will communicate through lawyers about setting up the trust for my portion." Tyler stood too, looking uncertain. "Wait, do not you want to stay? Maybe we could talk more, try to figure this out." I looked around the table one more time, at my father who had finally apologized, but only when money was on the line, at my brother who had admitted his lies, but only when he had no choice, at my mother who had cried and said the right words, but had failed me for years, at the cold turkey and wilted salad and the remains of my pumpkin pie. "No," I said finally. "I have said what I needed to say. You got what you needed from me. That is enough for today." I walked to the door. Behind me I heard my mother start to speak, but my father stopped her. I appreciated that at least. I did not need more words today. I had done what I came to do. I got in my car and drove home. That night I sat in my apartment feeling emotionally drained but strangely lighter than I had in years. Over the following days, my phone continued to buzz with messages from my family. Tyler sent long texts apologizing again, saying he wanted to rebuild our relationship, that he recognized now how badly he had treated me. My mother called every day, sometimes multiple times, crying and asking for another chance to be the mother she should have been. My father sent a single short text that simply said, "I meant what I said. I was wrong." I responded to all of them politely, but briefly. I was not cruel, but I was not warm either. I needed space and time to process what had happened. I focused on my work. Jefferson's Sweet Corner became my sanctuary again. I decided to use part of my inheritance to expand the bakery. I hired 2 new employees, invested in better equipment, and started offering baking classes on weekends. My business flourished. Customers loved the new expanded menu, and the classes filled up weeks in advance. I was doing more than surviving. I was thriving. Thanksgiving became a memory, but not one that haunted me. It became a turning point the moment I stopped waiting for my family's approval and started living fully in the life I had built. I set clear boundaries with my family. I would attend major family events, but on my own terms and my own schedule. I would leave when I wanted to leave. I would not tolerate disrespect or dismissiveness. Christmas came and they invited me to dinner. I went, but I stayed for exactly 2 hours and then left. The dynamic had shifted permanently. They treated me with a new kind of respect, cautious and careful, like they were afraid I might disappear if they said the wrong thing. Tyler no longer made smirking comments or dismissive jokes about my career. In fact, he started asking genuine questions about the bakery, about the expansion, about my plans. My father surprised me the most. At that Christmas dinner, he asked about a new recipe I was developing. He actually listened when I explained the complexity of getting the right texture in a macaron. He did not understand it, not really, but he was trying. That effort meant something, even if it came late. My mother tried too hard fussing over me, asking constantly if I needed anything, if I was comfortable. It was exhausting, but also touching in its way. She was trying to make up for years of silence with excessive attention. I appreciated the attempt even as I gently maintained my boundaries. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. My bakery expanded again. I started dating someone I met through the weekend baking classes, a kind woman who appreciated both my work and my complicated relationship with my family. Life moved forward. One morning, I sat in my bakery early before opening, watching the sunrise through the front windows. The smell of fresh bread filled the space. I thought about that Thanksgiving, about standing on my parents' porch with a pie in my hands and nowhere to go. I thought about the phone calls, the desperation, the lawyer at the dining room table. I realized something important. The inheritance money was not the real prize that day. The real victory was in standing up for myself. It was in refusing to be desperate for their approval, in understanding that I did not need them to see my worth for it to exist. It was in setting terms and watching them meet those terms because they had no other choice. Grandma Helen had given me one final gift, and it was not the money. It was forcing my family to confront the cost of taking me for granted. It was making them choose between their pride and their greed, and showing them what I was worth in the most literal sense possible. But even more than that, I had learned that I did not need their validation to be whole. I had already built a life worth living. The confrontation had just made it official, visible, undeniable. I had forgiven my family mostly. Forgiveness felt better than carrying around anger and resentment. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It did not mean pretending the past had not happened. It meant acknowledging the hurt, learning from it, and choosing how to move forward. I chose to move forward with boundaries, with self-respect, with an understanding that I deserved better and would accept nothing less. I maintained healthy distance from my parents and brother. We were cordial, occasionally warm, but never again would I center my life around their approval. Instead, I invested my time and energy in the people who had valued me from the start, my bakery team who showed up every day with enthusiasm and loyalty, my close friends who had supported me through the difficult years when my family had not, my new relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection, the community around my bakery, the customers who came back week after week because they loved what I created. Sometimes people ask me if I regret going back that Thanksgiving night, if I wish I had just let them lose the inheritance, if I think about what message it sent by giving in to their demands. The answer is complicated. I went back for myself as much as for them. I went back because I could, because I was secure enough in who I was to face them on my own terms. I went back and made them acknowledge me, apologize to me, literally eat the fruit of my labor, and admit it was good. That was not weakness, that was power. My father called me last week. It was a short call, awkward in the way our conversations still sometimes are. He told me he had been telling his friends about my bakery, that he had brought some of my pastries to a gathering, and everyone had raved about them. I told them my son made these, he said. I was proud to say it. It was such a small thing, but it mattered. It was the kind of thing I had wanted to hear my whole life. Hearing it now, after I had stopped needing it, made it somehow more meaningful. Sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. That is a hard truth, but it is true nonetheless. But you get to decide what happens next. Do you shrink yourself to fit their expectations, dim your light so they feel less threatened, apologize for being different, or do you stand tall, build your own life, and let them catch up if they can? That Thanksgiving, I learned I did not need them to see my worth. I already knew it. I had known it all along, even when I pretended I did not, even when I kept showing up hoping this time would be different. And when they finally needed me, when the tables turned and I held all the cards, I showed up. Not because I was desperate for their love or approval, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I was secure enough in myself to set my own terms and walk in with my head high. That is the difference between begging for a seat at the table and knowing you can build your own table anytime you want. That is the difference between needing them and choosing how and when to engage with them. The inheritance sits in a trust fund, managed carefully, invested wisely. I use some of it for the bakery, some for my future, some to help causes my grandmother would have cared about. The money is useful, but it is not what changed my life. What changed my life was understanding my own value, setting boundaries, and refusing to accept less than I deserved. What changed my life was that moment of standing on a porch, humiliated and rejected, and choosing to walk away with dignity instead of begging to be let in. Sometimes walking away is the only way they learn to follow, and sometimes by the time they do follow, you have already learned to walk alone. That is not a tragedy. That is freedom. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who is struggling to stand up for themselves with their own family. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I hope you all find the courage to know your own worth, and I wish you peace in whatever family situations you are navigating. Take care of yourselves and remember that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself.